All right, folks, without further ado, let me go ahead and jump up into this joint. Here we go. Let's open up them call lines. You know what? But rather than me explain what's going on and who you are, if you could take a moment and let the people know while you're on the Breakthrough Live, what your name is and where you're from.
I am from Pennsylvania. My name is Tobias, or better known as Twin. I'm here to have a breakthrough with Dr. Shawn, and just to kind of explore.
Absolutely, absolutely. So this is a beautiful thing. I'm sitting here trying to get the doggone audio right. Still, I'm going to see if we can kind of muscle through this because the audio is still a little low for me, Twin. The reason we call him Twin is because he actually has a twin, and his twin is a gentleman named Kamar, who is going to be on the show very soon. These are lovely, lovely people. And so today we're having a conversation about really diving into past, particularly because this episode that we're working on is about transcending the past. And so the thing that I'm thinking about, and I know that, you know, in order to be on the Breakthrough Live, you had filled out a form, and on that form, it's so interesting, and it's something I never knew about you, but there's a box that says, what are you interested in talking about? And there's a box that says generational trauma. That has been on my mind so deeply these past few weeks because if you're in the United States right now, you can't help but notice that there is a political angst, and that political angst you imagine comes from this deeper psychic wound that people are experiencing. And so those wounds don't just happen overnight. They've been there, right? And so when we start talking about generational trauma, we start talking about healing, the important thing is that we're understanding that this healing is something that it's not just for us. It's for everyone that comes after us. And so, Twin, the big thing I wanted to talk with you about tonight is what, when you selected that box, what did that mean for you?
For me, generational trauma was what I experienced. It's something that I want to break and never repeat, never have another human being repeat that cycle ever again.
Right. If you're able to break and transcend, then you know that you're doing it for not just yourself in the future, but for all of yourselves in the future. That means the children, that means their children, that means the communities that they're involved in. There's no more of this, folks trauma dumping or keeping things bottled up inside until they explode, until someone's aggression or, inner anxiety turns to violence. That goes away. And that's not something that's affecting one community. That's affecting humanity. And so I'm hearing you say that as you're thinking about taking and understanding, you are taking the opportunity to take responsibility for these energies within yourself, regardless of even if they're even your own, and they come from other people. And you're understanding that when you do that, that's what being a man is, because you're taking care of other people in that very moment. And so I'd be curious as to understand, what has been something that, when did you start to notice that the trauma that you were experiencing wasn't yours? It didn't start with your life, that it was generational. It wasn't just a something that happened to you exclusively. It was something that was happening, that was history in the making, that was a groundswell that came from a time before your own.
Me and Twin, we are foster care children. So I actually grew up in a wonderful foster home. My foster parents were great. But you kind of learn certain things, and certain things are learned. But for me, my trauma started when I went back to my biological family. I started seeing things that just questioned my existence. It questioned who I was. It questioned, the things that I used to do when I was in foster care, the things that made me become alive and become who I am. Those things were being restricted from me, So I often questioned myself, well, if I ever have children, how would I raise my children? And so being a foster care child and then kind of returning back to the biological family, it kind of did something for me there. And I kind of got to see both sides of the fence. And so the generational trauma that I talk about is in comparison to a lot of foster care children. And sometimes, they get out of the system and they have nobody. So all they can do is repeat what they already learned, a learned behavior. First off, I had my first child at 18. I had my first child at 18, purely probably out of a sense of that no one was going to tell me what to do. That's number one of generational trauma, okay? So once I did that, I didn't grow up. That didn't make me a man having a kid at 18, In fact, all I did was put financial strain. So I had to learn on certain ways. And what I was doing was just repeating a set of patterns that I had been taught. I wanted to break all the generational trauma that I could. I wanted to be a curse breaker. Well, no one gives you a manual to do that. So first off, no one tells you how to heal yourself.
So are you saying that the decision to have your first child at 18, that decision itself was a reaction to the sort of sense that you weren't in control. You didn't feel like you were in control in the early half of your life, the early childhood, and perhaps even the teenage years. And so by the time you were 18, you were able to legally be called a man. Are you saying that, the child came out of that feeling of wanting to feel like you were in control of your own destiny and wanting to feel like you were the captain of your own ship and therefore ready to step into probably the most important job any of us have, which is fatherhood?
Correct. Yes. I had my own house at the time, so I really, my ego was, you couldn't tell me nothing. Again, that there, what I want the audience to understand is that there is a generational trauma, because what I was doing, I was deconstructing myself without even realizing it. Instead of taking the time out to heal myself or learning how to heal yourself, I just did what I wanted to do, which at the time it's self-sabotage without even looking at it. If I would have been like 36 now having kids, they would not even have had any of the generational trauma I would have. Does that make sense? In foster care, my foster parents never put their hands on me, ever. When I went back to my biological family, that's all they did. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't want to skip over that because I'll never forget. I went to, I was in another country. I was in East Africa, and I was asking about, how they discipline their children. And I was like, oh, so y'all give y'all kids spankings? Y'all, make them go get a switch? Y'all make them go get a belt?
Mm.
And they were like, ew, no. Like, they looked at me like I was insane. And in that moment, I was like, oh, wait a minute. We talk about generational trauma, and unfortunately, we're not talking about just our parents. We're talking about their parents and their parents before them and their parents before them. And if you go back far enough, just in the last 500 years, you start finding that people were what we call enslaved. People were prisoners of a state, right? And the way that you discipline those prisoners is with beatings. And so, if we don't like to think of it, but hitting our children doesn't come from us. It comes from something else. It comes from a historical trauma of another group of people, right? And so now that trauma gets shared. It gets shared across cultures. It never stays self-contained.
I got taken away in foster at 1.5 years old, basically 1 year old. So being returned back to them, I've never met them pretty much. I never had any sensation of family or any of that mutual feeling. And, so for them to inflict that generational trauma on me, was very, I mean, you have to understand at that point, it's something where you're, as a child, you're like, why me, God? Why is this happening to me now?
Right.
You know, I had a
Right.
perfect beforehand. Why now? But I understand now why we had to go through that, because I can be a voice now.
Exactly. And keeping in mind that the people who were doing the abuse, these were folks who also, it's not as if that was their first time ever seeing a spanking.
Exactly.
That was also probably how they were treated as young people.
Yep.
And so what I'm saying is that violence and aggression used on children to keep people in line is that comes out of a certain heritage of domination, of people looking to dominate other folks.
Yep.
And obviously we come from a culture that is very beautiful, that is very resilient, that's very powerful. But hey, look, there's some healing to do. And it's not just our culture, it's the world, it's the global culture of humanity. And so we're not here to point fingers. We're here to be able to say, oh, okay, we recognize what the problem is. We're just simply recognizing that, oh, here was the trauma. And so what is the one thing that you feel like you just can't let go of? You're almost there, but just not quite.
I would say the one thing that from the past that I can't let go of, I would say the memories or the feelings that come up again, you know, on certain days or so forth. And then you have to battle that within yourself.
Right. So you can be just looking at somebody who doesn't look like your biological relative today, but look like how they looked back in the day.
Right.
And it can trigger something to be like, oh, I remember that. Or you may see someone at the grocery store yelling at their child and remember what that felt like to be the child.
Yeah.
That is where I want to insert today's gift, because we only have a few moments, but a few moments is all we need. I had the exact same experience the other day. Is the crazy thing, where I just had these memories. They were popping up for me, and I'm laying in the bed. I'm about to get ready for my day. That's when I practice my kits. And for some reason, on this particular day, I like couldn't turn my kits on. Like, you know what I'm saying? I listen to my kits every single day, but on this particular day, I just couldn't get to the phone and press the play button. And so I'm just sitting there and watching these memories.
Mm.
And this really beautiful new way to move revealed itself to me. And I want to share that with you right now. Let's take one of those memories. Take one of those memories. Let's say it's of being yelled at, or that energy right before one of the biological relatives strikes you. You can sense the energy in the room switch, right? And so just that is enough of a trigger. Just that, because you can be walking through the grocery store and still hear that energy pop off. You can still feel it pop off. You can be in your own home and still feel that energy pop off. Even if the same event doesn't follow, you know that it could. And so let's work with just that memory. I know you can feel it, and I know you understand what that is like. This kit is called Through the Looking Glass.
Okay.
And it is a play on the zero gravity technique. It's a species of the zero gravity technique. So here's how it works. When you went to the zoo as a kid, all of the big animals were on the other side of the glass, right? You can go and see the lions, the tigers, you could go and see the gorillas. They could hurt you if the glass wasn't there, but the glass is there. And so there's no problem. Whatever's on the other side of that glass it can't hurt you. And so now when we come to consciousness and we see that awareness, when we can stand as awareness and just look, just observe the memory itself, observe the memory of yourself feeling small and scared as the energy in the room switches, right as someone is about to strike you, that biological relative. We just apply awareness. And what we notice is that awareness, when applied to that memory, it puts the memory on the other side of the glass. So right now, close your eyes and simply observe that memory, including the feeling, all of the energy, every single element. Hide nothing from yourself. Hide nothing from yourself. Simply observe this memory unfolding. See the carpet, the ceiling, the remote control in your hand, and you feel that energy switch. You're just observing. You are the awareness that is observing this memory as if the memory were a movie playing out in the theater of your mind. But you notice that no matter how loud the people yell, no matter how much your heart races and the sweat starts to accumulate on the remote control from the palm of your hands, no matter how much anxiety you experience in the memory, because you are simply observing and aware in this moment, the entire memory is on the other side of the glass. It cannot hurt you. In your mind's eye, I want you to see a red emergency button just in arm's reach, right on this screen of awareness. And right to the right of the screen is a red emergency button that you can hit right now. And once you hit this red emergency button, the ceiling on your home inside of this memory, it opens up. And the full content of the memory, I'm talking about all of the sofa, the carpet, the furniture, the people, their voices, everything lifts right up into the air and it becomes weightless as balloons. When you press this red button, every single thing in this memory is going to begin floating up, up, up into the air. And you will still remain as the awareness that watches. Right now, hit that red button. And like a superdome, see the ceiling in that memory begin to open. And slowly, every single thing in that memory begins to float. All of the artifacts on the walls, all of the carpet, all of the people, even the sweat droplets on the remote, they float up into the air. Every single thing becomes weightless like balloons, floating above you until it's completely out of sight. But you remain as the stable awareness that never fades. Anytime that memory shows itself, you are not concerned because you know it's on the other side of the glass. And what's more, there's a red button just to the side. And anytime you press it, every single thing in that memory becomes weightless, insubstantial, non-consequential. And there you are, remaining as the awareness that watches. You may open your eyes when you're ready. So, Twin, I just have one thing for you, which is the question before we jump up out of here. We have about 60 seconds, which is, what's the feeling as you're working through the looking glass? What's the feeling that you have inside of your body right now?
Peace. I feel at peace. And it's just a good feeling.
Say it one more time.
I have peace. I feel at peace.
Mm. And just that simple thing is all that's required in order to convert that energy of anxiety, of stress, convert it into the energy of peace. And so, Twin, I thank you so much just for jumping on the call. I thank you so much for offering your story, for offering your frequency, for offering your lessons, and for offering your time ultimately to this exploration of peace and the alchemy of generating peace.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Shawn. You have a wonderful day.
Okay. And we back. And we back. Thank you so much, Twin, for that conversation